Yo, what's checking, everybody? Welcome to another edition of the Orangebloods Modcast. This Modcast brought by deadsoxy.com. Get your 25% discount over at deadsoxy.com right now. Use that promo code Orangebloods. We love our socks over at Dead Soxy. And if you don't believe us, Jason will put his foot up on his desk just to prove it. Alex, Anwar, Jason, all with us to talk Texas football for pretty much the next hour. So do us a solid. If you're coming in right now, like this video, subscribe to the channel, get notifications by ringing the bell, pass it along to every single person in your life. Rodolfo, good to see you first in the chat as usual. Fellas, let's just start out. Last night, ass kicking. Damn. TCU. We'll get to the Texas stuff in a little bit, but it's kind of hard, Alex, to ignore that big stinking turd that's just like festering an odor in the house from last night. I was kind of embarrassed for TCU, and I covered Texas. Like, who am I to feel embarrassed?
Yeah, no,
but I did.
Yeah, man. The Big 12 is a big festering turd in the room, man. I've been saying this since 2016, man. Texas and OU can't get out of this thing soon enough. The fact that Texas and OU have to share revenue with little pissant JV, peewee, little PP schools like Baylor is beyond any kind of comprehension to me. It always has been. So, yeah, an embarrassment for the Big 12. Clearly, Texas has to get its stuff in order, as it moves to the SEC. But here's the thing, man. Like, it's like you can't put on the big boy pants until the big boy pants are available to you. So I think that it'll be a situation where Texas and OU, they'll adapt, man. I think it's probably going to take some time, though, to get up to that level of play. And, you're not going to get Georgia week in and week out, man, but it's going to be a lot different.
I'm going to go to you last on this, Jason, because you had an interesting take, and I'm curious to see if you repeat it. But Anwar, did you have any vibe at all? Did you stick with the game? Did you care?
I mean, I turned it off a little bit after halftime. I knew what time it was. I think, though, I view this out of a different lens than everyone else does, especially Alex. Like, okay, it was an ass kicking, but it was an ass kicking in a national title game. So like I find it hard, especially when I hear see Texas fans kind of shitting on what happened last night. And it's like, wait a second. You do realize the last conference title that Texas has won was 2009. You do realize that this team has been in one Big 12 championship game since then. And so, yeah, the TCU got there. And of course, at that point, you know what? I joke with you guys on Slack. I always say, how many 5 stars does it take to beat TCU? Well, Kirby Smart's like, we got enough, right? We'll go ahead. We got enough 5 stars.
The answer is 16.
Yes. I've been asking it for years, and now I know. But at the end of the day, TCU had an amazing season. They had a once-in-a-lifetime kind of run that nobody expected. Anything they would have gotten in that game would have been a bonus, but it's a freaking amazing season for them. So I'm not going to sit here and shit on them. They had a year that I think most fans around the country, including Texas fans, would have been freaking happy to have 12-2 and get into a national championship. I'm not going to sit here and shit on them today.
I don't want it to. Like I said, this is not me dogging on TCU. This is me dogging on the dog shit Big 12. And Texas is a part of that. I mean, but clearly. So
I thought one of the things that was interesting about last night is when the game was over, because I don't remember hearing Sonny Dykes mention this at any point before the game. But he was like, yeah, we probably won some games that we should have lost. Whereas before, you're constantly trying to put yourself into a position where you seem deserving. And then once it was all over and 65-7 is an official thing, there was a little bit, Jason, of an acknowledgement of Georgia is just better than we are. And there's probably a lot of ways to view how they're better than us. And the fact that we got lucky a few times this season probably points to that.
3 minutes into that game, it was clear that they were on totally different levels. And I'm going to talk out of both sides of my mouth a little bit. Listen, I like Sonny Dykes. I've said it all year. I think he's a fantastic coach. I respect what he did in year one at TCU. How can you not, right? 65-7 notwithstanding. But I'm the guy who said, I don't think there's any way TCU should have been in the college football playoff. I think it's a disservice to college football fans that we had to watch that trash last night. I met up with some buddies. Yesterday was one of my buddies' 50th birthday. We went and watched the game, and I was like, dude, I just hope it's a good game. That's all I'm hoping for. And like 10 minutes in, we're like, all right, we're leaving at halftime. So, listen, TCU got lucky a lot of times. They couldn't beat Kansas State when it really mattered. I mean, they backed into the college football playoff. If I'm truly ranking teams, I don't know that TCU is a top 15 team in the country. They got lucky in a lot of wins. They got really, really lucky against Michigan. I mean, Michigan turns it over on downs inside the red zone, 2 interception returns, damn near like a Hail Mary for 75 yards practically, a long punt return. I mean, and they still barely won that game. I mean, everybody says, well, they beat Michigan.
Won.
They got as lucky to get. Yeah, I don't care.
It don't matter. It's still a W.
Onward.
They were up
Alabama
like 3 scores on Michigan at one point. Like, of all the games this year that they got lucky in, the Michigan one isn't one that I'll nitpick.
Oh, my goodness, dude. They got so many bounces that way. Yes, they won, but they had a lot of things went their way that don't usually happen. Bottom line is I said Alabama should have been there. And if Alabama played TCU, they beat them by 3 touchdowns. I don't have a doubt in my mind. I think it was a disservice to fans that TCU, who couldn't even win the Big 12, who Alex points out is pretty shitty, they couldn't even win the Big 12, yet they're in the college football playoff. I don't get it. I didn't expect them to lose 65-7, but there was no way that game was going to be competitive, and it was a disservice to fans to even have them out there. Man.
Can't say they didn't deserve to be there if they won their semifinal game. Like that doesn't. If you told me they got blown out in the semifinals,
if they played Michigan 10 times, Michigan wins 9 of them.
They played them when it counted, Jason, and when it counted, they won. So if you told me they got blown out,
Texas might have beat Michigan if they would have played them.
If you told me they got blown out in the semifinals, if you told me they got blown out in the semifinals, I would agree with you. They won their semifinal game. So at that point, they deserve to be there. Now they got their ass kicked. I don't understand how you or anybody can say they deserve to be there when they lost 65-7. It could have been 100-7, Anwar. Legitimately, Georgia could have scored 100. They legitimately could have, I think. It was an ass kick.
They did not deserve to be there. Any team
they deserve. I 100% disagree. 100% disagree. They won their semifinal game, Jason. Lucky or not, so you can't say they didn't deserve them. They won the game that they needed to win to get there.
They didn't win it. Michigan lost it, dude. Michigan lost that game more than
Who cares? Who cares?
We're gonna have an hour-long argument on this.
TCU did not lose last night. Georgia won. That's true. No, a few thoughts, and ironically, they all kind of point to some of the commentary made by everybody in this. TCU, well, Alex, to your point, the best 2 teams in the Big 12 played the best 2 teams in the SEC in bowl games and lost by a combined score of 104-27, which feels emphatic.
No bad.
Well, then at that case, Catch, then if you're Texas and OU, you shouldn't be in any kind of rush to get into the SEC.
Well, and hold on, Anwar, because that's one of my – so that's point number 3 that I'm going to make. Point number 2 is that TCU has a really weird season where they make the championship game, but in the national championship game, but they don't win a championship at all. And – I don't know. It's not the conversation I want us to have, but there's a conversation out there to be had, like what's more valuable conference, like, Kansas State wins the conference championship and then TCU doesn't win a championship of any kind, but they finish second. Well, they won't finish second in the rankings, but they'll finish second in terms
AP
of.
has them second, which is just stupid.
Really?
Yeah, it came out today.
Okay.
AP had TCU number 2. So
they finished the national runner up, but yet they'll never wear a ring that says they were the champion of anything, and kind of an unusual season. We don't often see that. Don't nobody watching this suggest that Texas wouldn't trade any season it's had since 2009 for the season that TCU has just had.
I don't know, man. If it ended like that, I get it. You made the championship. You think Texas fans would trade that? I don't know. Maybe so. I think I'd rather have if I'm a fan, like probably the Sugar Bowl win is better than losing 65-7.
I mean, to be clear, what it would mean is that Texas went undefeated during the season. They played in the Big 12 championship game and lost. Won the very first playoff game in the history of the Big 12, and then played in the national championship game for the first time as a Big 12 school since 2009.
And then got beat down so badly that opposing fans are going to make fun of you for the next 100 years for losing 65.
No, I mean, I get it. I get what you're saying.
Don't care. Had sex.
And onward, to your point, it was hard to watch Georgia last night do whatever it wanted to with that TCU defense. I mean, guys are just running free in the secondary, and Brock Bowers is putting together an N1 mixtape for the NFL draft, and he's not even eligible yet. And Texas scored 7 points, and it was a painful 7 points against TCU, or 3 points, right? What was the final score of that game?
I'm sorry. I thought you were saying last night. Yes. Texas against TCU.
So it was a bit dispiriting. It's like it was a reminder of Texas still has a very long way to go, because say what you want to about TCU and the beatdown that Georgia put on it, Texas had zero success against the same team that got beat down by 58 points last night.
10 points Texas scored against that team.
Okay, sorry. I completely forgot the score.
Yeah, 17-10. So that therein lies the whole thing. And I know Alex he doesn't like he says that thing. What is that thing, Alex, where you can't necessarily compare one game versus another game? Like you use this word, I always kind of forget what it's called.
What do you? Oh, you're saying how you can't. How you can't say just because this team beat this other team that the other one can't. Yeah, I'm trying to think.
Corollary, something, whatever. We're not.
Yeah,
there's
some fancy word that you use to describe how you can't compare one to the other. But I think we go to the bigger point, Catch. We're talking about a team that's finished 8-4 that lost in the Alamo Bowl. Do you remember, Alex?
The transitive property doesn't apply to football.
Thank you, Alex.
I can't think of it, man. My brain feels fried. Yeah.
So maybe it doesn't apply. You can tell yourself, well, Alabama, they played close against Alabama, but this is still a team, to your point, Catch. They still lost four games in the Big 12. They lost in a bowl game, against in the Alamo Bowl. So there's still a lot of work to be done. Going into the SEC. I mean, that shows you, because that TCU had that 1 week. Texas is going to have that every single week, Catch. I'm not saying they're going to get their ass kicked every single week, but every week they're going to be fit. This week is out Alabama. Hey, now we got Florida at home. Oh, we're back at Arkansas. Here comes Ole Miss. Here comes Tennessee. Then over here, it's going to be like that. And so, Texas, they've got to get ready for what lies ahead, because you can't beat TCU, even though the transfer of property is going to be real tough when you got to get the SEC.
Well, you and I both written articles, and I'm sure we've all said in some shape, form, or fashion, man, you better get something done in 2023, because you've got to be as good as Georgia is to win, or Alabama, right? I mean, Alabama put a 45-20 dump truck beating on Kansas State, and as I said, the two scores end up being 104-27 when you look at the best two teams in the SEC versus the best two teams in the Big 12. So there's a standard that Texas is going to have to get to, maybe not to make the playoff, right? Because once you start letting 12 teams in, I don't think people really have a full grasp of how crazy it's going to make college football starting in the middle of the season every year. Teams that are 25th are going to start bitching that they deserve, you know what I mean? Stuff you don't normally care about. If you're ranked 20th in October, you're not really gnashing your teeth about it, but moving forward, you'll be paying attention to everyone, and the discussion amongst how many teams every year think they should be in the top 12. There'll probably be 10. And So it'll be one thing to be one of the best 3 or 4 teams in the SEC, which could get you into the playoff. But to get to a SEC championship game and win it, you have to be better than Alabama and Georgia when they've got it turned on to a 10 level like Georgia did last night. And there's just layers and levels to this that Texas needs to get to, which I'll use as a segue, right? So we're part of the conversation about, and we'll get to the super chat questions in just a second. I just want to set the stage for kind of the conversation around Texas, which is they're aiming to get to standards and levels higher than the one that they played at this season. We've seen a couple of players announce that they're going to come back. Christian Jones being at least, we had heard rumblings of that like a month ago, and we just never could get Christian Jones to give us an answer. I think Jason and I tried to track him down for a couple of days, and then it was like,
I
he'll either
texted him.
come back or he won't.
No, I'll put this. I texted him, remember, Catch, and I said, "Hey, let me just pull it up." But I said, "Hey, there's rumors of something," and he was super polite, but he's like, he goes, "How did you?" I said, "Hey, had someone mention you're coming back. Is that legit? Good luck to you, whatever you decide. How'd you get my number? Enjoy your weekend."
Which was I don't really care what the answer is. Maybe don't call me again.
It was the nicest way to say F you without, but be super polite about it. So, thanks, Christian.
Did you have a good weekend?
It was a few weekends ago, not this weekend. So can you remember that far back?
I can't remember. I can't remember this.
That was brain cells ago.
I would have put the pictures from my weekend just all throughout, like, hey, I'm having a great weekend.
Jason, I'll come to you on this, though. As Texas is in a week where we're waiting on, I guess Jalen Ford hasn't technically announced what he's going to do. Looks like Xavier Worthy's coming back. Jordan Whittington announces he's coming back. Christian Jones is coming back. Moro Ajomo announces that he's gone. Brennan Marion appears to be headed to UNLV as the offensive coordinator. Texas is working the portal, and there's expected, at least I continue to be told, this is the week when we're going to see some portal stuff go down. And I get the sense that it will be impressive, but we'll see. In your mind, because we're in the middle of a lot of things kind of ongoing, true freshmen enrolling, Arch Manning's in campus or in Austin. What needs to happen in the next week, couple of weeks, month, whatever, like when we look at where this team is now, what needs to happen beyond, well, the quarterback play's got to get better and they got to play better as a team for Texas to start taking to maybe take a smaller version of the TCU step, right? Not necessarily in the playoff, but winning the conference championship?
Boy, that's a really good question.
Thank you.
Because the only thing I can really think of is quarterback play has to be better. I mean, the defense has been pretty good. I mean, they're going to have to fill in some gaps at defense, of course, with, DeMarvion Overshown leaving. Defensive line's going to have to – some young guys are going to have to step up. Getting Jalen Catalon from Arkansas, which should fill a nice void at safety. The young guys have to step up. You're going to have some young guys step up at running back. We didn't see it in the bowl game the way we thought we would. Xavier Worthy has to play better. Bottom line, Catch, a lot of things have to happen, but it's hard when you say we can't just say the quarterback play has to be better. That makes it pretty tough because that's the overwhelming, the biggest thing that needs to improve.
Do you think if nothing else happens, but Quinn Ewers takes a step forward from 130, let's say 132 season efficiency to 160?
I think Texas is playing in the Big 12 championship game next year. Yeah.
Okay. Everything else be damned.
Yeah, I think the other things, they'll get some help at receiver with John Tate.
That's the kind of shit that lifts all boats, Catch. If you get that,
I agree. I just wanted to hear him say it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
Alex,
I think absolutely.
Same question for you. You could say you can say at the very top, well, better quarterback play and we've landed on the moon, or just that acknowledgement out of the way, fill in any of the gaps that would be in your brain.
Okay. Well, the Quinn stuff out of the way,
Yeah, you've noted.
or the quarterback in general. The quarterback in general. I don't even want to say it's 100% Quinn, because, like I've always said, if we get 2022 Quinn Ewers in the spring of 2023, he should be replaced. He needs to make a big jump. As far as the other ones, I have just with Jason, I can't agree more about Catalan. He's gonna have to step in and be a starter. So making sure he can stay healthy, making sure that shoulder is okay. And from everything that we know, it seems like it is. He's had now that thing was in the Cincinnati game, the second time he heard it. So that would have been September 3rd. Yeah, so he'll be coming into spring ball. September's the 9th. No, so it's October, November, December, January, February, March. I mean, he's going to be six-ish to 7 months off that. I mean, when you have these shoulder subluxations, we've seen guys, in the NFL come back after just a few weeks off, and he would have stayed in last year if he didn't also have the hand injury. When he had the hand injury too, Coach Pittman just said, like, look, man, like, you're not playing like you used to play. Go get that shoulder fixed, and we'll move on to next year. So he would have played through it last season if it wasn't for the concurrent injuries. So I would say Catalan, make sure that he is healthy, because he's automatically going to have to come in and start. And I think that these corners, Ryan Watts was good last year. I think we're going to need to see, Terrence Brooks, Austin Jordan, can these guys step up and be every down kind of dudes? I mean, Terrence Brooks,
got a transfer corner too, Alex, the Gavin Holmes kid.
Gavin Holmes from Wake Forest. I would say, wouldn't you think that Terrence Brooks has sort of a leg up on him coming in, though? Just having been in it for a year.
He played pretty well, right, when he was forced into action. So,
yeah, he did. So I was just, if he could take the next step is an important thing. Also on the defense at the edge position, clearly, Ovi's gone. I think there's going to be some transport for portal stuff with that. Ketchkin might be able to go more into that stuff. But I've always said with these transfer portal edge guys, how good are they really? And Texas has not hit on them. So I feel like there's going to be some stuff where, we're going to have to monitor Ethan Burke. We're going to have to monitor Jamon Tapp. We're going to have to monitor guys like Jerry Bledsoe. And then also, how can guys like, Colton Vosick, how does he come in and affect things? At this point, I don't think Akana is going to affect anything, right off the bat. But what about, like Darian Gillette and got players like this? What can they get going off the edge to just get something going there? They need to get something going there to make everything right. I have no worries about the defensive front with T'Vondre Sweat coming back along with Byron Murphy, but I do just worry about that edge position. And then I think that one of the more important things, somebody asked about it earlier. Maybe I think somebody asking super chat about Christian Jones. So we'll probably get back to it again later. But I just think another important thing is making sure that offensive line shakes out with all the best, with the best players, so they can keep up the momentum that they had from last season.
We'll rattle off the super chat questions in a moment. So if you want to send them in, we'll get to them in just a second. I don't want to leave
one other thing. Keelan, they can't play him so much. They need Keelan Robinson. I mean, they just can't. They need to get something else going as far as running back.
Also noted.
Yeah, just keep him in a complimentary role when he's really good, man. You make that guy the focus of the opposing defense and run him up into the teeth of that thing. It isn't going to work in an inside zone run game.
Anwar, I hate coming to you last on this because it feels like a lot has already been said.
No, actually, I got a lot of different things. I'm actually okay.
Oh, please, by all means, and I don't even have to ask the question.
No, so for me, one of the first priorities for me is finding a replacement for Marion. And at the end of the day, I can't necessarily look at any of the receivers from last year and tell you who got better. And because I can't tell you who got better, that means this hire has to be a little bit better than the hire that they had for 2022. None of us saw Xavier drop passes to the degree his freshman season, like we saw in his sophomore season. Something must have happened in the tinkering of him, in the off season that didn't yield the best results. And then we didn't see anybody else really step up. They signed some good guys, but no one else really stepped up, just guys at spots. So to me, finding someone that to replace Marion and finding an elite guy at that position to catch. Like I said, like we talked about yesterday, this will be the third wide receivers coach that they've had in 3 seasons under Sarkisian. So you need a little bit more continuity there because you can't have a revolving door at that position. I think the second thing that's kind of a low key one for me, I think it's got to be a real heart-to-heart conversation with Gary Patterson and asking him, what will it take for you to stay on? Like, what role would work for you in whether it's his current capacity? Would you like to be elevated? Like, what do you want? I believe in giving Pete K a lot of credit, and I've been really consistent on that. But you can't deny that Gary Patterson did have a positive influence and a positive impact on this defense. And so you definitely, with a guy like that, you want to find a way to keep around. So, Gary, what are your goals? What are your aspirations? There's probably not really any head coaching positions that are going to be left for Gary at this moment. So if we were just talking about position coach versus, what those kind of things, like potentially coordinators, but a lot of that stuff always set. What do you do to keep Gary Patterson? I think that's a big thing for me. The last one for me, Catch, kind of goes to what Alice was talking about, but just a little bit more specific. I think you got to get Cedric Baxter up to speed as fast as possible, because when given the opportunity to play Jonathan Brooks and Jaden Blue in the bowl game, Steve Sarkisian didn't do that. And so that shows a little bit for me a lack of confidence in where those guys are and their abilities. So that to me then means Cedric Baxter has to be the guy that you tell yourself, okay, we got on day one, we've got to make sure this guy is ready to go just because he didn't show any confidence in the other guys in the bowl game. Those are my 3.
Onward, both you and Alex said like a million things that I want to respond to, which is good. That means we're having a good conversation today. I think we'll get to them before we're done here. I think we can circle back and touch on a few of these things and hit super chat questions. But I think you're right about the running back thing. I think for all of you can't play Keelan Robinson that many snaps, like Alex mentions, and it's been a point of conversation on the message boards since the game was played. The underrated storyline in that is that it doesn't look like Sark had any confidence in Jonathan Brooks based on his, like, don't show us with your words, show us with your actions. And if we're reading what happened in that game based on actions, he didn't lean on Jonathan Brooks like he was the future starting running back of the program.
Yeah, no, I think, I'm still, because things keep coming up, like the Alamo, like the going down to the Alamo Dome and all the rest of, like, I'm still just now finishing up the game breakdown on, so the offense, I haven't done the whole thing, but just whenever you look at just the participation in the bowl game, at least through the first half, he put in Brooks starting basically halfway through the second series, and then gave him the third series, but the third series was gave him the start of the third series. But when, he didn't, all they did was pass, they got Keelan back in there and they had a couple run plays. It was like at the very beginning of the game, Brooks was seemingly getting, a little bit of equal opportunity, not like a starter, but, more of a rotational back than you would think. And then as you get to closer to half, it feels like he sort of gets phased out and, isn't in there on any of the times when they get into a lot of scripts where they're just running over and over again. So it feels like he could never get going. And I don't know what did you take away from his usage? I don't really know what to take away from it, because it felt like the offense never really got going in the way that it would like to anyway. It wasn't like the ground game was ever really established.
If Cedric Baxter hadn't signed, I would have thought, well, they're just them telling Cedric Baxter, don't go to Florida State. We need you right now. That it happened after he'd already signed. I mean, they could have done anything. And
right.
That they did what they did.
And the guys are mentioning in the chat, I see some people mentioning that he was hurt. They wouldn't have played him if he was hurt.
Yeah, he was well enough to play.
He was coming off of, what was it, an abdomen or a sports hernia?
Yeah,
like he was coming off of one, but like they wouldn't have played him if that. Like we've seen Jordan Whittington have like 2 of those. Man, like they're careful about those. So, I mean, it could have had something to do with it. He could have not been completely up to speed, but let's not act like he was playing, he was playing hurt with his guts falling out and some kind of big hernia or something. I mean,
he doesn't play if it's anything risky at all, as evidenced by kind of everything else that happened in that game. Plus, if he was hurt and you weren't going to use him, then just sit him down, right? It looks worse, actually, if it's like you played him 6 carries when his guts are coming out. So I don't know. Let's do the super chats real quick, and then I want to return to back to Gary Patterson after we knock those out, because I have an interesting question. At least I think it's interesting to all of you based on something that happened last night. Jay the Activist has a couple of comments in the super chat. If Alabama was so good, they should have beat Tennessee and LSU. Don't tell me one-score game. Win the games.
Both road games against very good teams that literally were won by their opponents on the last play of the game. Then TCU should have beat Kansas State. I mean, Alabama lost 2 very tough, very close games. I mean, it happens. Except
let's be fair, Tennessee with its backup quarterback beat the brakes off of Clemson in a major bowl game, and LSU, I can't remember who they played. They beat somebody 63-7 in the bowl game.
Mm-hmm.
Like, I don't think it was Goliath, but they got a hold of somebody 63-7. So they weren't awful teams to lose to. Maybe put some respect on Tennessee and LSU, but I do understand Jay the Activist, kind of the gist of where you're going. He followed that up by saying, check the score of the last 4 SEC teams that we've played. Touche, Jay the Activist. Touche. What were the last 4 games?
Purdue.
Okay.
Oh, my bad. I just wanted to let you know. Purdue
that's
was
who LSU beat the hell out of. Thank you.
Yeah, sorry.
Okay. Who are the last 4 teams that Texas has played from the SEC if we work it backwards? It's Alabama, close loss. Arkansas last year, not a close loss. Who am I forgetting from there? Georgia in the Sugar Bowl.
Georgia and LSU.
LSU was that the same year? LSU.
So obviously, Jay saying Texas very competitive in all of those games, other than the Arkansas game, obviously. And then Dylan asked about Jonathan Brooks. Wasn't he hurt? We just kind of answered that a second ago. Sorry, Dylan, that we got to it before we actually went to your question. Probably feels like you wasted $5. Our bad. And then you guys are going to answer that anyway. And then I got to make my screen bigger so that I can completely.
How does Anthony Hill compare to previous 5-star Harold Perkins?
I've gotten this question a lot, Jason. What do you think?
Different style of player. Perkins is just a super freak athlete. Hill is like a linebacker. You almost make him in a lab. Alex can tell you, we saw him down at San Antonio for All-American Bowl, and he just looks different than the other guys down there. He looks college ready. I mean, he's big, but he's got washboard abs. He's a thumper, and he can play in the middle. Perkins is just a freakish athlete, man, with just elite level athleticism and speed. I've had people ask me, how do I compare who would I pick for the two? As much as I like Anthony Hill and I love Anthony Hill, I'm taking Harold Perkins.
Perkins a little athletically just freakier.
Mm-hmm.
I get asked this question all the time. We have the benefit of seeing Harold Perkins. We got asked this yesterday, didn't we, Anwar, in the Monday Overreaction show? It's a question that keeps coming up a lot. We saw Perkins was literally almost an All-American this year.
Yeah, but we saw. I mean, it's easy to say now, right? We saw what he did at LSU, but this guy in high school, I mean, it's not a surprise. I mean, he might have been the best running back in the country, maybe, or right up there as a high school player. I mean, I thought he was the best running back in the state last year. Yeah, I mean, the guy is just a super freak, even at the high school level, and we've seen it carry over, college so far. But I think Anthony Hill's gonna be a really, really good player for Texas. But Harold Perkins is just a different cat for me.
I will answer it the same way I answered it yesterday. I literally rated both guys as 5 stars. So they're ranked exactly the same. If you're asking me who I would put in front of the other in a world where we're talking about a batch of 5 stars, I'd probably put Anthony Hill, because I think he was both the best linebacker and the best running back in the state of Texas last year. Very
Perkins.
reminiscent.
You said Anthony Hill. You mean Perkins?
I mean, yes, Harold Perkins. Very reminiscent of DJ Williams when DJ Williams was the number one overall player in the class of 2000. And having seen how DJ Williams' career unfolded, where All-American at Miami and then a first-round pick with the Broncos, and then I think he played with the Broncos forever. Really long NFL career. Plus, I saw DJ Williams running naked on a beach in Maui once, which tie goes to the naked running back, I suppose, which somewhere out there there's who is the Texas running back who went naked? Edwin Simmons, like in the 80s, was alleged to have been like running through a neighborhood naked.
I don't know that story.
Is that why there's a guy on our board called like Edwin Simmons pants or something?
Yes.
Like that? Oh,
Yes!
I had no idea.
I've never thought of that.
Sense in the world. I had no clue what the reference was.
I don't want to get sued because this predates me, so I'm going to use the word allegedly. But allegedly, there's a story that he was in a neighborhood with his pants off in the mid-'80s.
Oh.
Maybe if you do a Google search on Edwin Simmons, I'll do that the next time someone's talking to see what we find. But yes, that is why there is an Edwin Simmons pants handle on the board. It goes back more than 40 years.
Yeah,
So cool.
Closer to half a century. Or no, like 40 years. Okay. So, Alex, I wanted to circle back on – I want to ask all of you guys this question because Alex was talking about the edge positions and that, you'd like to upgrade at the edge if possible. If the portal provided a starter, like amen. But they've recruited a lot of guys to potentially play that position. So, Alex, I'm going to give you two.
Okay. I'm just saying, man. I mean, the portal here's the thing.
I know.
No,
and look, what I'm about to do is going to literally prove your point, okay?
Yeah.
There are a couple of guys in the portal right now that I think Texas has quasi-interest in. They may not be able to get them to come in for a visit when it's all said and done, but I think they've got an absolute interest in South Carolina's Jordan Birch, who is like 6'6", 275, but he started for South Carolina last year. 3.5 sacks, but it sounds like he had a lot of pressures. So you've got him, and then you've got Javonte John Baptiste, who was a player at Ohio State who's like one of these – he's a souped-up Ray Thornton. Played more at Ohio State than Thornton did at LSU, but he was a reserve this season.
Is he related to Stanley?
I don't know. My question is, do you take a guy like – those guys are more proven than anybody that Texas has. But if you take one of those guys to be your starter, you're stunning the growth of every single edge guy that you've signed – from Ethan Burke to Jamon Tapp to –
That's the thing, Catch. It's like, well, I mean, first of all, I'd have to see these guys because if a dude like John Baptiste or somebody comes in here, like you look at his film, you're like, well, yeah, obviously he's great. You get him. But, I mean, this Ben Davis, Ovio Guofu, Ray Thornton jump just doesn't work, man. It doesn't. Like you could have gotten the same results as you were saying earlier, Catch, and possibly better results. By letting some younger guys loose. Just let them go play. I mean, what's the point of having a guy like Colton Vasek and recruiting a guy like that and flipping him from OU? What's the point of that whenever all you're going to do is go and get these recycled goods from the transfer portal? You got you got a blue chip option there. Do some of these guys need time to develop? Ethan Burke, Jamon Tapp, probably. But these are good players that you chose on your own. That chose you. They're not retreads. They're good 4- and 5-star type players. They've been, in the case of Ethan Burke, he's been productive in the time that he's been here. In the case of Jamon Tapp, he was recognized without any sort of prodding from Anwar whenever he asked at the press conference for the National Signing Day about who's been standing out. That was not a leading question where Anwar said, has Jamon Tapp been standing out? On his own accord, Sark went out of his own way to mention how Jamon Tapp had been standing out in practices. So it's like you have all these guys, and as you mentioned earlier, not only that, but when you just look at the ones that they have coming in, you have guys like we mentioned Colton Vasek. We talked about Darian Gillette. We talked about but we didn't talk about like guys like, who knows, dude? What if like something like a Dylan Spencer comes in and is super, or like a Billy Walton, or I mean, I don't know. I don't know. Sometimes these guys come in and they're good. Here's the thing that I do know. In the transfer portal, if there's some edge dude that's still in there right now that's been a backup, that's some kind of freaky athlete guy that was at a good school and he's been a backup and he doesn't play, I've seen that prototype. The staff loves going after them, and all you're doing is you're keeping these good players. Some of these dude, Colton Vasek's like a blue chip. He's a star in the making, and you're gonna just say like, hey man, we're gonna sail this ship down at least one more year before you're even involved in any kind of too deep discussion. I think it would be stupid.
Just a reminder for the record, Dylan Spencer ended up flipping over to Houston, so it would literally be shocking if he Texas Tech. That's right.
Let me take him off my little. Let me take him off my little depth chart sheet here.
How do you remember that? I don't even know. That was like 3 weeks ago. Does anybody Anwar, like, do you have a different vibe on that at all? Like, so here, Jordan Birch, who I think is going to end up at Oregon. There's a lot of thought that Oregon is literally the reason why he's in the portal, but he was third on the team at South Carolina with 60 tackles this season. 7.5 sacks, 3.5 sacks, 7.5 tackles for loss. He was pretty good, but he wasn't by no means one of the best players in the SEC at his position. Would you take a guy like that and potentially slow up the process for a guy like Ethan Burke, for example, who I think you and I are both big fans of? Jamon Tapp, who was mentioned as Alex mentioned in the bowl game press conference. I'm just curious because it feels like kind of being stuck between a rock and, a hard place.
I mean, I'm just surprised that Papa Sorrell hasn't chimed in yet and given his opinion as it relates to this whole
situation. He plays the other one. He plays on the other edge. People are asking about Finkley too. Yeah, people are asking about Finkley too. Both those guys play the strong side defensive end. I'm talking about the weak side edge guy.
Okay, gotcha. I mean, Catch, you can't turn it up. You can't turn it down. And I'm to me, Catch, this you bring in a guy, and it's almost kind of like Jaleel Billingsley, right? Jaleel Billingsley was brought in to be the starter. At the end of the day, Jatavian Sanders just ended up being better. And then you didn't care about Jaleel Billingsley, and he just went to go about his merry way. I think you bring in a guy, if you think he's better, that's cool. And if your incumbent beats him out, then, if Ethan Burke is fine, then fine. So be it. If some of these other guys tap, so be it. But if not, then you just let that guy start. So that to me is, especially when you talk about edge rushers and the necessity of that. Absolutely. Like if there's guys out there who can do it, who are good at it, you've got to try.
Real quick,
but can I just say one thing about that? I mean, clearly I agree with what Omar just said. Just makes sense. What my only concern is we've seen these edge guys come in and be terrible, and they just keep playing them. They give them so many snaps. They give almost like 800 snaps last year. Ray Thornton played the second most. Ray Thornton played almost as many snaps as like these safeties and corners that never get subbed out. So you just wonder, man, like whenever these guys come in and totally cuck the rest of these younger players, like it's like, Jatavian Sanders, I get that, he obviously beat out Jaleel Billingsley and all the rest. I just don't know if some of these other guys, if some of these other guys have gotten that same opportunity. It feels like some of these guys have come in and just kind of been bequeathed these positions.
By comparison, just to give it some perspective, Birch at South Carolina this year at the same position essentially in the South Carolina defense that Ovie Ogofu played, 60 tackles, 7.5 tackles for loss, 3.5 sacks. Ovi had 54 tackles, 8.5 tackles for loss, and 2.5 sacks. From a production standpoint, it's basically a wash. So he's bigger. 6'6", 275 is a monster. But from a productivity standpoint,
profile, which
yeah,
I think these coaches weirdly take that into account. I mean, to me, I'm of the opinion that, I mean, I get it, they need depth, but like, was it Coach Royal? I think I've said this before. Like, if a pup's going to bite, it's going to bite as a pup. I'm going to totally screwing up that phrase, I know, but these guys have had their chance to bite as pups at South Carolina and Ohio State, and they were decent players, but you're looking for true difference makers. You give a guy like Colton Bosick a chance and, put him out there as a pup and see if he can bite. And, maybe Ethan Burke in year 2 or some of these dudes. So I don't know, man. I don't like taking players just because for the sake of taking decent players. I'd almost rather see the development of the young guys and see what they can do. The young elite recruits that Texas has landed, and put those guys out there and see what they can do.
I'm going to segue back to Edwin Simmons for a second. So I typed in the words Edwin Simmons naked into Google. First thing that pops up is an LA Times story from 1986. And it says University of Texas running back Edwin Simmons was suspended indefinitely from the football team after his arrest on Saturday while standing nude in an Austin, Texas resident's backyard.
Ooh.
Austin police responding to 2 prowler calls said they arrested Simmons, 21, when they found him without clothes on at 4:40 a.m. outside of a house.
Who was reading the internet in 1986 for these stories about naked Edwin Simmons? I know I wasn't.
You're not even around in 1986?
I have no idea. I was literally 10 years old.
Yeah.
So no more. You don't have to say allegedly. That's looks pretty factual at this point. Huh?
Yeah. According to the police report, he was bare ass naked. Maybe that should be someone's handle, Edwin Simmons bare ass naked. Anyway, so we can put the Edwin Simmons pants discussion. And Edwin Simmons was a good player. Like, that was the thing. It wasn't like he was some scrub. He was actually a really good college player. And then then he's naked in front of a house. And I bet it was Terrytown. No, nothing mentioned. But what the hell other neighborhood would you be in 1986 if you were naked? They're not calling the police on you on campus. Like, it didn't say West Campus. I bet he ventured over to Terrytown. And that was just a bit much.
In my backyard up here in Leander, Texas, I'm calling the cops. I don't think it matters what neighborhood you're in.
So. If there's anybody naked in any of the backyard of me or any of my neighbors.
But see, you guys live in the suburbs now in 2022, 2023. This would have been old school Austin. Where
somebody in the chat saying that it could have been a situation where it was a boyfriend came home and he had to jump out a window.
Well, look, we can all imagine the scenarios of which how do you end up naked? I mean,
I think it could have been. I think
it could have easily have been that, yes. Yeah. But anyway, I digress. So last night, I get sent a link, or someone mentions to me through DM that there's a job listing over on the UT Jobs deal, and that it's for special assistant to the head coach. It's basically Gary Patterson's position. And Anwar, this is us circling back to your Gary Patterson deal about its importance of the offseason and everything. A couple of interesting things about this. When I first saw it, I thought, well, that might be a sign that Gary Patterson's not coming back next year, because that's literally Gary Patterson's job. Yet I had somebody very quickly get back to me and say, no. It's not about Gary, which I found interesting, that there was such a quick response back to clear the air about its relation to Gary Patterson. It makes me think, nobody did that for Brennan Marion. So maybe for a second, the Gary Patterson is at this point leaning towards coming back for another year at Texas. Then I was told the reason why this isn't Gary Patterson related is because this is for an offensive special assistant to the head coach. I was given no names, no hints, but I was told that it would be a headline grabber potentially. Then someone on the message boards mentioned, what about David Cutcliffe? And my eyes opened wide, and I thought, that would be one hell of a hire.
That rumor was out there back when Arch was first being recruited, so that he might be in
Absolutely.
play. Remember, I actually hit up his son, who's a high school coach, and he's like, I have not heard that at the time, but that was a year and a half ago. So maybe, Arch is on campus. Maybe that makes a lot of sense, honestly.
I mean, I guess there's a two-part question on where I'll come to you first. Steve Sarkisian, I don't know how much help he thinks he needs on the offensive side of the ball. We've seen what we think Patterson means to the defense. How important could an offensive assistant to the head coach mean? And if it's David Cutcliffe, given his relationship to the Manning family, and that's just us speculating, but if we're talking about somebody who would fit the profile of a job like that and has previously been mentioned for that kind of job during Arch's recruitment, general thoughts.
Yeah, I mean, if like you said, if it is Cutcliffe, that helps, as far as, like you said, the Arch, the family, this connection to the family, and all that he brings that's there. So, you probably, would love that. And if you can pull that off. So, I mean, that would be huge. I think that would be major, and you would definitely be going. It helps the program for sure, and probably helps Sarkisian to a certain degree. Another sounding board that's out there for for him to kind of bounce some things off of, because I don't know that Sarkisian really has guys catch that he's bouncing ideas off of and really getting some feedback from. It's obvious, like he's, especially during games, that he's basically, that's him and no one else. I'm not saying an analyst can help, but just for the game prep, probably would help him out, and especially in the second half where that seems to be the, sometimes a little bit of a struggle. So, I think so. Yeah, Cutcliffe would be amazing. Patterson would be amazing. I know Jay is asking about Cliff Kingsbury. I don't even know what that benefit really is to me.
Cliff Kingsbury's an NFL head coach. Come on, guys. I know he just lost his job, but
he was.
But Alex, you think he gets another head coaching job?
No. I think Cliff needs to take some time to chill out. Yeah, I mean, I think he needs.
Retreads in the NFL fall forward all the time.
Oh, Cliff is another head coach in the NFL? Oh,
yes.
No. I thought you meant college.
Not when you go from college. Not when you go from college and fail like that. That's why Matt Rule is. It's like, nah, you're good on that one. Like, nah, he was a failure at Arizona. But I think, quite honestly, he wasn't that great at Texas Tech.
He was better in the NFL than he was in college.
Yeah, for sure. So I mean, he's been riding that Patrick Mahomes thing, and he was able to ride that thing to a great payday. But Cliff Kingsbury is kind of just a guy to me.
The Houston Texans, they'll do it. They'll look. Well, his record in the NFL. Hold on, because I don't think he was a disaster. In the end, he was just very average. Like he was pretty bad. 28-37-1 is not good.
No, he was not good.
I mean, he was so bad. I mean, his contract is guaranteed through 2026, and they still told him to get the hell out of there.
He just renewed it extended it last year.
Because they made the playoffs last year. So they were like, okay, let's get Cliff tied down. They went 11-5 last year, which is actually, if you're a head coach, if you're 2 seasons removed from going 11-5 and losing to the Super Bowl champs in the playoffs, I'm telling you, mark my words, somebody in the NFL is going to hire Cliff Kingsbury, and he's going to fall forward.
As an NFL head coach,
loves that. They love giving
in the NFL.
Huh?
He in this
NFL?
cycle, you got to be kidding, man. He's
I'm not saying this cycle. I'm just saying at some. So where does Cliff Kingsbury go to rehab his career?
Offensive coordinator somewhere.
Yeah, or like a quarterback's coach or something for a young quarterback. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, Alabama would. That's be the, yeah, of course.
You may have just
nailed
it on Mark. It might be as simple as that.
That's exactly it. That's exactly
It's the
it.
rehab.
He is.
He's an analyst at Alabama. You know, he gets hired as an analyst in Alabama, then eventually he coaches in college again. But
He's the guy that replaces Bill O'Brien at Alabama. And then he'll coach with Alabama talent for 2 seasons. And then his head coaching job will come then. His only pathway to the NFL, maybe he has a great relationship with a future number 1 pick in the draft who's from Alabama, right? Because that'll happen at some point. Even if they just transfer in. Alabama collects all the good toys. Okay, well, look, that was kind of it. Those were all the things I wanted to circle back to. The edge thing and like whether or not you take – Jordan Burch is a good, solid player. Is that what you would take in the portal? Like, feels like – so we talked about that. I don't mean to reset that because we certainly talked about it. Gary Patterson, the portal. Jason, real quick, your biggest takeaways from and I'm sure some of this will be in your 3-2-1, so forgive me for maybe stealing a little bit from that. But biggest takeaways from seeing guys in San Antonio in the All-America game?
Biggest takeaways. One would be Tausili Akana's way leaner and lighter than I expected. I'm looking officially, he's listed at 6'4", 220. He ain't 220. He told me he's 210. He ain't 210. I think he's going to need some time in the weight room. I thought, just kind of go through the list here. I thought Ryan Niblett maybe was the most pleasant surprise for me. I mean, listen, he's a Rivals 100 guy, so it's not like he's not ranked very highly, but I thought Ryan Niblett looked about as good as any Texas recruit down there when I watched him. I mean, he was explosive, really caught the ball cleanly all week, much better hands.
Isn't that the concern? Because everybody wants to kind of compare him to like a Deshaun Hales and say, oh, that didn't work out, and their profiles are kind of similar. And Hales wasn't a natural receiver.
He looked like a natural receiver with his route running. I mean, really getting his breaks. I mean, I think Alex was there one day, and he can tell you too. I mean, he really can get in and out of his breaks pretty quickly, stop on a dime. But he caught the thing that most impressed me is he caught the ball cleanly all week. So I thought he looked good. Anthony Hill was Anthony Hill. You expect him to be good. Those games really aren't suited for linebackers very much because they can't do a lot.
It was basically Georgia versus TCU in that game.
Yeah, well, that's the biggest takeaway. I think I said that in our Slack thing. I'd never seen an all-star game that was that big of a blowout. That was pretty crazy. But the other Jelani McDonald, the Texas, he signed in December, but of course he announced down there at the game. Alex, I think would agree with me on this one too. I mean, I was taken aback when I saw Jelani at the first day. I'm like, holy crap, dude. Because he's working at a cornerback and he's in all the DB huddles and things in the drills. He's 2 or 3 inches taller than anybody else out there playing defensive back. I mean, just looks like $1 million. He's not going to be a cornerback at Texas, but he is probably going to be a nickel, play at the nickel is what Texas is talking to him about. And he held up really well, man, for a guy his size, just tremendous length. I mean, probably close to 6'2", looked really good, all week down there. So nice, good, solid performance from the Texas commitments. Didn't get to see much of it in the game because it was such a blowout. But I think a good, solid week for those guys.
Alex, before we go into parting shots, just want to kind of ask you the same question, especially about Niblett and McDonald. I mean, McDonald's an interesting guy. Just real quick, from my perspective on McDonald, if you look at his high school stuff, Alex, they play him near the line of scrimmage a ton. So it kind of plays as an outside linebacker for his high school team. And you see him knifing in lots of tackles for loss. I mean, he's a playmaker, but feel like he just at worst he's a tweener, but at best, he might be kind of freaky athletic. Like if they nail that position and he develops in just the right way, feels like there's a lot of upside there. How did you come away from the week itself and what you were able to see, but specifically on McDonald, since he just committed, how do you see that one unfolding?
Well, he has the athleticism and just like the dynamism like Jason said, the playing corner and just the hips and just like with some of these guys, you can just tell just like what kind of athletes they are. And this guy, he plays whatever linebacker in high school, comes out there. These are good wide receivers that are out there. Some of these guys are big, they're tall. He's turning with them, he's running with them, he's getting in his hip pocket, he's going up and breaking up balls. I didn't even know who Jelani McDonald was. That like I follow recruiting is a lot more during the offseason than I can because in the in-season, I'm like breaking down the games all week. I get on the Modcast. Like next thing you know, it's game time for the next game and all the rest. It's hard to know who the targets are that Texas has been talking to and everything like that. And so with Jelani McDonald, I didn't even know. I saw he's an uncommitted kid on there. But I was there to watch the Texas guys, right? But still, this dude keeps on showing up in my notes, So I asked Jason afterwards, and about him and some other lineman that Jason had no idea about from up in Utah. But I asked about what about this dude, Jelani McDonald, and he's like, well, Texas, I think unless he's blowing smoke, I think he's going to commit. And I was like, to Texas? And he's like, yeah. I was like, you haven't told me about this, So it's to me, he looked like he looked like one of the best players on the field, right? So you're just like, you got one of the stars of the whole, the whole day of practice. And I'm sure from talking to Jason and Cole that it was like that for the rest of the week after I didn't, after I wasn't there. But yeah, I mean, you talk about a guy like that I'm like Jason, I'm not sure he plays corner in college, but given just how athletic he is, the change of direction, and then what you're saying with the background, kind of maybe being closer to the line of scrimmage and stuff, they've talked to him about playing that nickel star position. You get an athlete like that at that star position, and you start thinking like, that star position is what, they call it the star position in Saban's defenses because like that, or Belichick's defenses. Like that's the guy. He's like a star. He's a star. Like that's your Minka Fitzpatrick. You can have a guy there that could be a huge difference maker. Jahdae Barron's been a pretty huge difference maker on his own. And I think that Jelani McDonald is certainly super, super impressive. And then with Niblett, was he the other one you asked me about? Because yeah. I don't think we need to talk about Hill. He's just awesome, and he's going to start. But with Niblett, he's a slot wide receiver. But he can go up and get it. He can go up and get it. And I agree with Jason that when you see him at his routes transition points, he's got that twitch to where he gives the quarterback that easy flash of separation to where even in an all-star setting where these guys aren't on the same page really at all, these quarterbacks in all-star settings aren't there throwing these dudes open because they know exactly where they're going to go and all the rest. He's the kind of guy that gets really open and he can separate in these spots. He's going to be really good out of the slot with option routes. He can also go up and get it. I worry a little bit about his framing ability when he's running his crossing routes. It feels like his hands aren't as soft when he's crossing over the middle or when he's having to really, 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 really frame it. But if it's one of these deals where, he's just getting out, getting some quick separation, getting a quick hitter, man, he sure-handed guy. And then I don't know if you noticed, Jason, but the back corner drills, whenever he would just have to go up and elevate for the football, you say, damn, for a guy that's a little bit smaller, he really has hops. And I think it just goes to show that same twitch that I talked about earlier, that acceleration out of the cuts, like all that stuff just really points to just generally explosive traits. And when you have explosive traits like that, it's not surprising at all that a guy clearly has a super, super high vertical and can make those kinds of plays too. So I like Niblett. I thought he's really good.
Barry, my man, Barry Sorrell in the super chat. Thank you very much. Happy New Year's to you as well. He's calling a shot right now. 88 will be first team all Big 12 this coming season, will be a leader and instrumental in younger players in the room development, but he is him at the jack. Ain't no going back. I love that Barry's not only contributing with the super chat. We always love the contributions. I love the absolute rhyming of the message and the calling out of I tell you what, I hope you are right, man.
Oh yeah. Yeah, I mean,
Barron's turned into a really easy guy to root for. So I hope I'm guessing with all of us, just on a personal level, that Barron Sorrell takes that next step as a player. Because if he does, now we're really starting to talk about a guy who's got an NFL future, which I think he's going to have. It's just about like at what level he reaches as a player and his current climb. You know, I think there's a jump next year where all Big 12 is probably a goal he should have. All the best guys are gone. Big Felix is gone at Kansas State. Tyree Wilson is gone at Texas Tech. So there's open room for that kind of guy, Barry. Alex, real quick, with Jelani McDonald, Barron stays there this season. Is that a McDonald versus Gilbo battle for 2024?
Oh man, I forgot. Yeah, Gilbo's good too.
Or can either of those guys play somewhere? If you're getting your best 5 guys,
yeah, man, yeah, and also, I mean, July. I mean, McDonald. He could probably. I don't know, Jason. Do you think he could do this stuff like just starting out? Maybe he could be sort of like a souped up kind of Maurice Blackwell type that they get out there on these kind of 3 linebacker sets where it's real, where sometimes they'll get him out on the slot wide receiver, but sometimes they'll just have him kind of off ball, but also off the edge and just that overhang. I like
originally that was what was discussed, but then when he came in for his official visit, they exclusively talked about him playing the star position. So
because it's so appetizing to just think about that guy in that spot, right?
Yeah, I mean, you got to see what happens with his body. Like right now, he's listed at 6'2", 205. You know, if he, he could end up putting
he
on
looks
25,
less than
30
that
pounds.
to me, but
Yeah, I would guess you're probably right, Kat. He's probably 195-ish if I'm guessing. But we'll see what his body does over the next couple of years. But that role has been discussed, Alex.
So I mean, yeah, but it's like those 2 guys. That's just rich people problems, man. I mean, here, dude, you're going to the SEC. You're gonna have, like, if you're gonna want to, like we just saw, like circling back and making a full circle on this whole damn thing. You just saw the kind of depth of really good players that Georgia has, right? You're gonna need to get that. Yeah, like they're gonna need to be these kinds of discussions about, well, what about Gilbo? Like, well, hey, man. It's like
survival of the fittest,
like,
man.
That's like competition at every position. This is what they preach. It's what these guys sign on for.
Last one, back to Niblett. So you think he's definitely a slot guy, and that leaves him competing with who behind Jordan Whittington?
Savion Red, I would say. Savion Red, and then I don't know if you would just. I always I have to keep asking I always keep asking if Jaden Alexis is even still on the team. I mean, he is still on the team. Right? So I would say Savion Red, Jaden Alexis. There's not really.
That's a Brendan Thompson spot, or no?
No, Brendan Thompson plays
He's on the outside. Yeah,
Brendan Thompson plays outside. So I have never. Xavier Worthy has never moved inside. Jaden, no. Well, of the guys that are coming back, who left? It was somebody that played in the slot besides Red. I guess he might have been 83. Gabe. Okay, but he was a walk on. But yeah, man, I would say that's about it.
That'll be a fun little battle to watch unfold.
Is he? I forget. Is he an early enrollee?
Niblett, no.
Or is it just Cook? So all right, so. Nibllett's not, but Cook is, right?
DeAndre Moore, the receiver that signed out of Cali, both early enrollees.
Casey Kane doesn't. This guy Zach Ramsey's mentioning Casey Kane. Casey plays outside at the X.
Cool. All right, that's all I had. All right, we can go into parting shots. Anwar, you've just been sitting there for a while we did high school recruiting bowl game stuff. So I'll come to you first on parting shots. What you got for us?
Yeah, I just want to kind of just reemphasize, obviously as the season has, college football season has finally come to an end. The one thing I think we'll probably all be able to agree upon, Catch, is that 2023, I think we don't think we can state it enough. It's a big year for Steve Sarkisian and this program for some of the things that we already talked about. But, first and foremost, 2023 will be his guys. right? So a lot of the Herman guys are going to be gone. It's going to be primarily a Steve Sarkisian team. We'll be able to see that. You look at his original staff catch. Wasn't the massive turnover, like the in and out like that we saw in maybe the Charlie Strong era. Didn't have an overhaul like Tom Herman had after a couple of years. I think the only guys that he's really lost from his original staff are Stan Drayton and Andre Coleman. Everybody else is pretty much intact. So, you have the staff continuity there. You have your guys that'll be there. And then we go back to what we started with at the beginning last year, probably before going into the SEC. It doesn't get any easier going forward. So that to me makes 2023 kind of a huge season as far as like expectations, as far as like you've got to get it done now, as far as knowing what this program will or will not entail. So, for me, everything's about this entire offseason gearing towards having the most productive and successful season probably since 2009, because if not now, I just don't know when. So for me, 23 is all about getting Texas to the Big 12 championship game and go and potentially beyond.
Mr. Sukumo, batter up.
Don't have a lot. Just Texas has a junior day coming up on the 21st of January. So what are we, the 10th? So not this coming weekend. Listen, I literally had to print. I did a calendar that I can fill out because every freaking weekend between my kids' sports, like my daughter had a gymnastics meet last week. This week she's in Galveston. My wife's taking her. Then it's junior day. Then my other daughter has a tournament in college, or a lacrosse deal in College Station. Then there's one at Williamson County. It's every freaking weekend for the next month or 2 or 3 months. But yeah, so I'm going off tangent a little bit off. But junior day on the 21st, we started a list. I had it. I think it was in the war room last week. We've added some names, so I'll update that list. But time to turn the page at 2024 recruiting, man. It's like there is no downtime with recruiting. So mentally, I was at the Alamo or the All-American Bowl practices, and I was talking to someone. I was like, man, I haven't flipped my mental switch to 2024 yet, but officially we are moving on to 2024. Not a lot left in 2023. And we'll hit the ground running, man, junior day on January 21st. So we'll have full coverage of that, of course.
Alex?
Yeah, I'm just like these other guys, man. It's just not much. Just Happy New Year to everybody. Hope if you made your big plans or your resolutions, you haven't fallen off the wagon just yet. Stick with them. Hopefully, even though I think that I'm like Omar. What was that guy said that like if you're gonna do something, eventually do it immediately? Who's that?
Yeah,
the credit to.
Yeah, Florida athletic director, I think German police said whatever needs to be done inevitably should be done immediately.
Yeah, so I've never believed about putting off the resolutions until that's a little cock and maybe to wait for a New Year's. A huge cop out. But if you did it, congratulations. Hope you're doing well with it. And yeah, man, I don't really have much. I'm excited about kind of starting to watch some of these 2024 guys, having some extra free time from not having any more of these games to break down to where I can go see a few of them live. It's always one of my favorite parts of this year. And of course, if you're over on Orangebloods, we'll have my write-ups. I'll have a couple of write-ups here at the end of the month from events like the Senior Bowl and stuff like that, where we'll have Texas players there to cover. And I also like to talk to scouts and other players just about who knows what kind of news and notes of interest will come up about Texas. But it's a fun time of year to reset, kind of begin to understand where the program is, where everybody is in recruiting, and sort of what the national narrative about the program, sort of where that stands among the football industrial complex. So I'm excited to get back into that part of the season, and it basically starts right about now.
Alex, you say that as I started my New Year's resolution today.
Oh.
And then today's day one for me. I'm like, oh, guess.
What is it? You're not gonna tell us? You don't want to be held accountable? Okay.
Yeah, no. So I usually do a like a juice cleanse at the beginning of the year, but this time I talked to a health person, and I'm actually doing like this thing called Prolon, Prolon fast. It's gonna be like a 5-day fast that actually involves like certain foods that you eat that came in the box that kind of tricks your body into thinking you're fasting. So it's like low cal. So anyway, just designed to get healthier. So it's kind of a juice cleanse alternative. So that's kind of what I've started today. It's a 5-day fast/cleanse.
Well, good luck to you, man. My business partner that started Roster Watch with me, Catch knows Byron. Byron does that 2 days, 2 times a year, but he does the Master Cleanse. Where have you heard of that thing? Where all you drink is this stuff. You just drink lemon water with some like cayenne pepper and some molasses or something in there. And it's just this drink, and he does it for 10 days, man, twice a year. I couldn't imagine what it's like doing one of those things, man. So best of luck to you, dude. By the end of that thing, are you just starving? You just want to go?
You know what's weird?
No,
go ahead, Catch. Go ahead.
I was gonna say, if you really want these things to work, like for the 10 days, I'm telling you, breaking your jaw is a good way. Like, once you get that mouth wired shut, you don't really have a choice. Then everything's coming through a straw, and everything's a juice. So if you ever really want to do it, like have someone hit you in the face with a rock, or have your dentist break your mouth like mine did, and you'll lose 50 pounds pretty quickly.
Oh, well,
if you had 50 pounds to lose.
I'd rather be
I would die.
Suddenly Anwar looks like he's been in a coffin for 3 months. So Jason, real quick, first of all, RC, I'm going to let you slide with this.
Yeah.
I'm going to let RC slide with this because I want to call it out. Guys, if we start parting shots, don't sneak in a $2 after we split that money with YouTube. It's like each of us getting a dime. Like, just FYI, try to beat the finish line of parting shots before you throw in the super chat, unless you do what Barry Sorrell did, which was drop a 20 spot, and at which point I'll go right to you. I'm that kind of whore.
The short version to answer his question: who do y'all see as the arch Anthony Hill of the 2024 class? Nobody's going to be like Arch.
Yeah.
That's a once in a generation thing. Probably Colin Simmons carries that kind of weight from Duncanville.
I don't like this class as much as I've liked the last few classes that have come through the state.
Yeah, and there just aren't. I know Micah Hudson's
he's incredible.
He is, but he doesn't have that kind of personality necessarily, like maybe a Jonte Cook even had. I really like the Jarrett Gibson kid out of Florida that I wrote about on Orangebloods this week. He's probably a 5-star back if he stays where his ranking is now. So he's from IMG Academy. He might be able to carry some kind of weight, but there's nobody going to be like Arch, and I'm not even sure right now. I mean, Colin Simmons might be the one guy that'd be comparable to Anthony Hill in terms of the weight he can carry with other recruits, but it's a pretty limited group right now.
All right, I'm going to use my parting shot for a little bit of help on this article that I'm working on, because everybody gets mad at me when I do the NFL metrics on WAR, because some people just don't like it, but it's not subjective. It's the reason why I am a fan of it is because the data is the data. So I'm re-ranking this 2018 recruiting class because I did 2020 last week, and I had a lot of fun doing it. We had a good conversation about it. And I always like to look back on who surprised, who hit, all of that stuff. So Tyree Wilson at Texas Tech, I've got him and Joseph Osai back-to-back right now in terms of rankings, right? So if we look at Osai's career, he's a consensus first-team All-American, and a third-round draft choice. Wilson was a second-team All-American consensus, but he's projected to go – I know it's early, and a lot of things can happen, but I see people talking crazy about him as an NFL prospect and where he might get drafted. If he ends up being like a top 15 pick or a first-round pick, does that trump – being a third-round pick? If one guy's maybe slightly better is a first-team All-American versus a second-team All-American, but one guy gets drafted significantly higher than the other, and I want everybody's opinion because then I'll let that be the tiebreaker. Which should I prioritize? The college in a re-ranking that's supposed to establish who the number one prospects should have been. Do I lean on college production or do I lean on if a guy gets drafted much higher in the NFL, what does that mean?
Well, if he got drafted much higher in the NFL and had worse college production, what that would mean is that he has much better athletic measurables, right?
No, production is almost exactly the same. It's just that one guy got recognized as a first-team All-America and the other guy didn't.
Okay, but what I'm saying is you have two pieces of this equation that basically two general pieces of the equation that a professional evaluator is going to look at whenever identifying NFL talent. They'll look at college production and they'll look at athletic measurables and upside, right? And then it's a constant weighing of this kind of thing. And so it's like last year with what it was just like last year. It's like, do you want to go with Travon Walker or do you want to go with Aiden Hutchinson? You know, one guy's get a lot more athletically gifted, but maybe didn't have the same production as the other guy, right? And so teams will value that stuff differently. I think that probably as an evaluator of high school guys, I'm sure you evaluate that stuff differently. I mean, you would say like, well, this guy, I mean, Harold Perkins. That's a bad example because he was uber productive. But it was kind of like the Anthony Hill, Harold Perkins discussion we were having a little bit earlier, right? It's like, one guy, you look at him and the profile might be a little bit better for, fitting into just a perfect slot is like a linebacker, prototype linebacker. This other guy, you look at him, you say, whoa, I mean, look at all this shit this guy could do. It's how do you weigh it? And so I would say that the ultimate sort of test with how you would weigh it wouldn't be the, whatever the subjective votes of these guys with his first team All-American.
Who would you rank higher, Alex?
Thank you.
Well, no.
Tyree Wilson. You go. He's a top 15 draft. Tyree Wilson.
But no, hold on. So when is fucking Tyree Wilson a lock for top 15 pick?
I'm not saying he's a lock, but Ketch said he's seen projected that. I've seen him projected first round. You go with Tyree
Wilson. I saw Colin Johnson at this time in his last season at Texas being projected as a top 15 pick. I think he went in the 6th round. Like so,
I saw a cockamamie story yesterday, Alex. It said the Bears should take Tyree Wilson at number 1.
So people are talking about him like that.
Yes,
and he's a guy that what are they saying about Kelvin Banks? I mean,
I don't know. This particular article only spoke about the Bears spending the number 1 overall pick in the draft on a guy that I think is just pretty good in the Big 12.
Oh yeah, just go pick him over Will Anderson. Like what is wrong? What happens during the draft where people just get brain worms?
Well, it's the thing that you just said. Tyree Wilson as an athlete looks pretty, as big and tall and athletic. Let me give you one more. This just as an example, okay? I've got a guy who was as I'm doing these re-rankings, he was a Jim Thorpe Award finalist, but didn't get drafted and didn't make an NFL team. And I think he might have been on a practice squad team this year, okay? So you've got a Thorpe Award finalist. And then you've got another defensive back who is first-team all-conference as a freshman, but didn't do a whole lot as a sophomore and a junior, ends up getting drafted in the 5th round and is a solid NFL player. Do you rank the Jim Thorpe Award finalist, who the NFL completely ignored, or do you take the guy that was just a solid college player but has proven to be a good NFL player?
Did one of them leave after 3 years? And
both of them left after 3 years.
Then I take the solid NFL player.
Same.
Me too, but it's subjective. Do you want to know who the players are?
Who are they? Yeah. Who are they?
The solid NFL player is Caden Stearns.
Okay.
And the Thorpe Award finalist was, let me make sure. Verone McKinley III, who played at Oregon.
Oh.
Consensus All-American, first-team All-Pac-12, finalist for the Jim Thorpe Award. undrafted in 2021.
Man, Caden Stearns has started a lot of games on a really good NFL defense. Like I think that I would definitely have Stearns ahead of him.
It's interesting because I agree with you guys, but I haven't finalized my article. But as it currently stands, I had McKinley at 6 and Stearns in a redraft at 10. And now after having this conversation, I might need to flip them. But if somebody calls me out and says I'm a Texas homer for ranking Caden Stearns over Verone McKinley, I'm going to point out we went to the taste, like the no look taste test. I just gave you the backgrounds, no names. And Onward, did you have an opinion?
Yeah, probably a little bit different than you guys. I'd probably go lean college production, but I'm outnumbered at this point, so it doesn't matter.
It just goes to the subjective. It's why when people ask me, it's my parting take. Takes me 10 seconds. When people ask me why I lean on the NFL drafted metrics and first and second day and third day, and I break it all down, there's no opinion. You guys can – it's not me trying to choose between two things that someone else could have a completely different opinion on. That's why I do it. I like the fact
I just think the guys are more so recruited to help their college team do well, more so than try to go pro. So that's why I'm more interested in how did that help the college team succeed more so than the individual success of going to the NFL.
That guy falls under the Puna Ford category, Anwar, except he hasn't stuck with an NFL team like Puna has. There are these rare occasions where a guy's just an absolute dope college football player and the NFL just discards them. And it makes it a little bit of a tough conversation when that happens because I agree with everybody. I agree with you. There's a reason why I currently have McKinley ranked 6th, even though he's not an NFL guy, and Stearns ranked 10th, even though he is a legitimate, solid starting NFL player and is, I think, started most of the games in the last 2 years. I have to go back and look what it was. He's been injured a little bit. Anyway, that's it. I'm glad. I took you guys inside the little weird question game I have to ask myself when I do these types of projects and then gauge how I weigh one thing versus the other. For the record, I'm leaning towards having Tyree Wilson ranked ahead of Joseph Osai because he's projected to be such a high NFL. This is all fluid. I'll be able to change it again next year if I need to, partly because Christian Jones is coming back. Oddly enough, that can be just – so is Tanner. There's a bunch of guys in that 2018 class that are coming back for super senior years. On that note, we did put up the note. Yeah, have a great 2023. Thank you, Joel. That's perfect proof that I'll go to a super chat comment in the middle or after parting shots if you motivate me enough. For myself, Alex, Onward, Jason, we've been going way too long on this modcast. I'm sorry if you guys are missing lunch or anything else. We will talk to you guys later in the week. Kieran will be going live tonight with his show. Onwar's got the Drunk Uncle tomorrow night. The content just continues to flow throughout the week here on the Orangebloods Texas Football Channel. Shout out to our guys at Dead Soxy. Use that 25% off discount. Go to deadsoxy.com. Promo code Orangebloods. Live it up. Get yourself some totally badass socks. Until next week, we'll talk to you guys later.